I have just gone through the hardest year of my life. And because I know how fragile and weak and vulnerable I am, I fully suspect that the difficulty will increase beyond my ability to mentally comprehend and cope contently. Like one day I'll just wake up and say, enough is enough. I just can't take this anymore. That is my greatest fear. And of course, my motivator, that I could be so into what is in my head at all times for the God's honest pursuit of truth in and for my life. And that this honest pursuit then becomes this overwhelming sensation of commotion, like a nonstop wave of judgments and criticisms, the thinking of thoughts and skeptical cynicism, of ups and downs, regrets, and remorseful frustration. This sort of indignation via self verbal assassination over and over and over and over. So much so that my mind ironically now craves it like an addict because I can't seem to go a day without it. This moment to moment questioning where I continually ask myself something along the lines of, am I enough? Am I doing enough? Is this really me? Is this really what I'm doing? Would anyone believe? Do I even really believe? And why? Why, right? Why God to every and anything is always pervasive. So you see, this is what it's been like and has been like, for me at least, for quite some time now. And again, I've spent the last year of my life willfully engaged in what feels like the center of a crossroad that didn't really exist until I created it, which means not only do I aid and abet it through this constant battle in my mind, but I can also tap out and abandon it at any moment. But more on that later, because just that paradox alone, in and of itself, will drive one to absolute madness. So just imagine the visual that is continually planted in my head, inside the mind of cliche Jeff, is a version of me encapsulated by the pull of social cues because I indulge in the allure and taste of richness like you do. And what this feels like is this immensely large demon that seemingly rises infinitely in a cloud of darkness, expanding its wings with the allure of confidence, full of boisterous material success metrics and friend verdicts, visual stimulations of impulsive rich spoils, embroiled in a thirst for drug induced highs that can lead one to misconstrue the view of life with structured rules. Faith in a truth that I don't deserve better than what my past has already proved. A past filled with poverty lighting up the rooms, project halls, desolate calls of fiends desperate for their quotas. I seek more, yet I can't recall the order. All this and that is an endless sea of thought streams providing no borders. Just me, with not one iota of withdrawal in my corner, leaving me to question, do I instinctively seek this life? This unfortunate set of misfortunes that seem to perpetuate my thought conscious? This is clearly a moment to tap out. Because you see, it's unordinary to think you can escape this. Because this is not just your distant and discreet past. Nope. This, this is your continued creation. And in that way, there is no relief from the thinking of mistakes from your past, which is quite the revelation as you seek your reparations. For once illuminated, we realize that that which we are thinking, whether or not we are believing, we are still receiving, meaning we are repeating or continually experiencing that which is etched and stitched into your fabric of thinking. Because try as you might, in our pursuit of a new truth, because that's what you are left to do, that is the burden for you and I, this burden of truth. And in that discovery, we find there is no way to erase and replace what has with what we wish it was and could be, and in mistakenly doing so, we somehow get caught thinking it'll change what it is, which leaves us in a perpetuated state of hopelessness. Think about it, that in order to refrain from repeating past mistakes and for us to not be defined as what we might have been, right? Because imagine in your mind knowing you no longer want to be this person, but continuing to be it. You want to tap out yet? In doing this, we pull our past forward. We drag ourselves into our present days with a prayer for tomorrow, never having released our yesterday. Now watch this, right? Because it's important to the experience. When we get stuck in our minds doing this, as opposed to building on our past, we rebuild our past as our present. You hear what I'm saying to you? Meaning, instead of creating something new, we recreate what we already have. Now imagine being left to realize this and be reminded of this in your mind constantly. How could that truth not disgust you? And this is the hardest truth that starts the wave of pain I referred to, which is that in order to ensure new truth in my life, I can't ignore anything I have done in truth with my life, which means I can't just release and delete anything about my life, which means I can never be anything or anyone else of truth in my life without also being who I have already been in my life. And that is frightening, because who you have been is always calling for life. I think, therefore I am becomes very prevalent here, to which I expound on and say, I am, therefore I am not. And who I am not is super crazy important from this perspective. The evolution of truth within means a conscious, moment-to-moment confrontation with self in what I believe is the hope of pursuing and finding self-dignity. Now, in order to do that, as you are engaged in this very dirty battle in your mind, you must enter in another version of yourself, one that is infinitely smaller than the brawler of your past. And because he is new to this, having less experience, he feels elusive and reclusive, moving about faster than a flash. And in order to grow this more desirable version of yourself, you have to be accepting of all that you are because of all that you have been, but also know it's unacceptable to continue being who you were for the sake of who you are trying to become. And that is how you create the battle in the center. The constant thinking of all that was versus the constant thinking of all that it could be. Old truth versus new truth. Old past versus new future. All happening in the present. You see how this hurts? That despite all the noise, despite all the distractions, despite all the excuses, confusions, the misguided illusions, what this is you becoming a witness to constant self contradictions. If I am, And I am also not what I am not, I also am. That is the pain of who you were versus who you want to be. And once immersed in this, there is no going back, which means you will find yourself alone in your head. And mine is a scary place to be. Moment after moment after moment, this monotonous and scrupulous scrutinizing of your life. It's time to watch yourself. And what you'll be watching is you failing willingly over and over and over again. And you know what you're failing at? You are failing at being the person you want to be, not because you can't. Like, listen, most of us can. It's your God given right and gift. You are willingly engaging and failing at being the person you want to be out of absolute fear and terror, not of the person you were. Nope, it ain't that easy. It is of the person you are. You get it? You haven't and can't leave that person behind. They have to come along for the ride. So it's hard. Yes, it's all hard. Nah, it's not as bad or as hard or as painful as I thought it would or could be. And I don't say any of this tongue in cheek. I say it because that's what stops most of us, right? The thought of how bad it could be, the thought of how difficult, hard, and painful it will be. We need to first be assured it's not that in order to muster the strength to do it. But make no mistake, it hurts worse still because it hurts worse than being still. You hear what I'm saying, man? It hurts worse because you think you're in pain right now and you think about these things all the time, but you don't really. Because who would willingly subject themselves to sleep once awakened? You see, it's one thing to be deaf to your excuses. It's quite another for you to be hearing them replayed in your mind on the regular. Like it's one thing to be blind before you start to see again. I feel like you're not understanding me, man. It's one thing to have brief reminders and subtle moments of shame and then go back to playing the same game than it is to live in fear of feeling shame over and over and over again. Do you hear what I'm saying now? For we must learn that to live in shame is to become shame. So to realize this and then return to shame is unimaginably difficult. So I can't tap out because to lose over and over again is to become a loser. And deciding to lose but not returning until you become a winner is unimaginably painful. But I can't tap out because it's one thing to ask when you know more must be given in return. You see, to wake up like this is to never want to sleep again until I, of course, am forced into death. The pain of this year for me is the continual conscious mental cocktail of who I am mixed with the constant reminder of who I am becoming, sprinkled in with knowing it must all continue to come with me wherever I go, despite everything I know. Change your mind, change your life. I am who I say I am. Do you and stay rich.